Your Commander-in-Chief, the President of the United States.
America sees itself as a no-nonsense place where solid values are instilled in the people by rational leaders. But what happens when the leaders turn to crazy ideas?
They used to put out there in the Old West a wanted poster. It said, "Wanted, dead or alive." All I want, America wants him brought to justice.
In the weeks after September the 11th, I started hearing rumours that the FBI were using psychics to predict future terrorist attacks, and that wasn't all. A former CIA man told me that the US Army used to secretly undertake thought death experiments, try and kill things just by staring at them. I said that seemed unlikely, and he said that's because I wrongly believe that our leaders are rational people.
This whole area is just crazy, and there's just as much nuttiness within our CIA and the Defense Department as there is outside of it.
Why is that?
Because people are basically nutty. That means there's lots and lots of people out there in high places in our government who believe in these far-out things.
Dr. Hyman came to meet us at the suitably surreal Las Vegas at the end of 2001. He said he didn't know much more because these things were highly covert, but he did give me some pointers.
I found people all over the Defense Department and all over some of our other agencies, be people who would learn to fast and go on a vegetarian diet, then a biotic diet, and then actually could fast for days without having to eat food at all. And they also would learn martial arts, but they also would learn to walk through walls, and they're going to learn to pick up other people's thoughts and stuff like that. And this was serious business, you know. Some people are actually pushing this.
I said I should try and find out what was going on, if these things are alive today in the war on terror, and he said good luck.
I don't know what's going on. It is an area where, you know, it's a funny area, you know, and it's a mess, by the way. It's very hard. If I suddenly became dictator of the United States, I couldn't track all this down. There's no way. You know, these agencies work by themselves, and there are people who work independent of the agencies they work in, you know, and you get all kinds of loose cannons running around there. It's just a mess.
And so, for the past 3 years, ever since my meeting with Ray Hyman, I've been piecing together the secret history of these experiments and tracing their ongoing impact on George W. Bush's America. This film is about how it all began in the 1980s with General Stubblebine and the Goats.
You're reaching deep inside you, go for things you've never known. It's been tough, rough going, but you haven't.
It is the summer of 1983. The US Army is still bruised from its defeat in Vietnam. Recruitment is at an all-time low.
Hey, First Sergeant. Good morning.
You can do it in the Army.
Over at Military Intelligence Headquarters, Major General Albert Stubblebine, who has 16,000 soldiers under his command, is secretly trying to walk through his office wall.
You know, the electron, or the atom, is made up mostly of space. Okay, well, my space is made up of atoms. The wall of space is made up of atoms. All you got to do is merge the spaces. But I didn't master it. John, I never got there. Didn't do it. Boom. I just haven't figured out how my space fits through that space because I kept bumping my nose.
General Stubblebine has never before spoken publicly about these things. He said he was confounded by his continual failure to walk through his wall. Maybe, he thought, he just had too much in his in tray to give it the requisite level of concentration.
I didn't, couldn't, wouldn't. No. Couldn't is the wrong word. I never got myself to the right state of mind, okay? If you really want to know, it's a disappointment. That's a disappointment.
The general had no doubt that the ability to pass through walls would one day be a common tool in the US military arsenal. This might herald the dawning of a world without war, because who would want to mess with an army that could do that? The general, like many of his contemporaries, was still bruised by his memories of Vietnam. The general was sure that these powers were attainable, so the only question was, by whom? Who in the military was geared towards this kind of thing? And then the answer came to him.
Special forces left!
Your special forces left!
Your left, your right, now pick up the step. Your left, your right, your left.
Your left, your right, now pick up the step.
If you think about the special forces, they are massively oriented on the ability of an individual, first, okay, to do things that an ordinary man can't do. But I made trips down to Fort Bragg and tried to energize people.
Back in Las Vegas, the CIA psychologist Ray Hyman said that the agency had asked him to evaluate General Stubblebine around the time of his trip to Fort Bragg.
Lieutenant General Albert Stubblebine III, I think, the second actually was.
And this is somebody very high up in the military.
Well, he was the head of Army Intelligence. So we've got to have supermen. We got to, each of our operatives got to be at least as good as 2 or 3 people. He had people going to spoon bending parties. And I once asked his successor, and I asked him if he had been forced to go to a spoon bending party. He says, "Oh, yes." I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, the spoon's bent." He says, but he says, "I couldn't see any military application of it, so I didn't think much of it."
General Stubblebine told me that he decided to start soft with Special Forces because he didn't want to alarm them with his big ideas about walking through walls. So instead, he produced from his bag bent cutlery, and this is what he told them.
If you take a look at that spoon, you can see that that's wrapped pretty tightly. It doesn't function as a spoon very much anymore. Look at this fork. I don't know whether you can see all of the twists and turns in that fork, but that's another example. And the key in all of this has nothing to do with bending metal. Has nothing to do with that, okay? What it has to do with, Lord mercy, if I can do that with my mind, what else can I do? But without much avail. It wasn't clear whether they thought I was nuts. In any event, the reaction that I got was, we're not very interested.
The general felt he had nothing to lose, so he suggested one last idea to Special Forces. He said they should maybe try and stare at animals and make their hearts explode. So what did you say to them?
I said, wouldn't this be a neat idea? If you could teach somebody to do this. I mean, I wasn't going to try that on a human.
Right. But I mean, you were saying...
Obviously, you can do it in an animal, you can do it with a human.
Yeah. But Special Forces didn't seem too interested in that either.
I left with my tail tucked behind my, behind my legs and walked away because I really thought it was a great idea.
For the past 20 years, General Stubblebine has assumed that they considered his animal staring idea to be crazy. I assumed it too, but then I went to see a Special Forces sergeant called Glenn Wheaton. Ray Hyman had told me that Glenn was part of a secret early 80s paranormal military unit called Project Jedi.
You've gone from the front door to the back door, but how many chairs in the house that you know? You probably can't tell me how many chairs in my house.
Really, the super soldier would walk through your house and know how many chairs there were?
Yes, he would know where all the lights were, would know where all the power outlets were. That would be as a point of observation. Most people are poor observers. They don't know. They haven't even got a clue about what's really happening around them.
In Project Jedi, what was the layer above observation and that kind of stuff?
Intuition. Is there some way we can develop you so that you make correct decisions? Like, somebody runs up to you and says, hey, there's a fork in the road. Do we turn left or do we turn right? And you go, we go right.
What were the other kind of extreme theories that were sort of mooted?
We had a master sergeant that could stop the heart of a goat.
What, just by looking at it?
Just by wanting the goat's heart to stop.
And could he actually do it? Did the goat's heart stop?
He did it at least once. So, but not really an area that you want to
go down.
Unless you get, not really an area that you really want to go to, because I think as it turned out in the evaluation, he actually did some damage to himself as well.
Huh.
Sympathetic injury.
Really?
Yeah.
So it wasn't as if the goat was psychically fighting back?
The goat didn't have a chance. This happened down at Fort Bragg, where it was called Goat Lab at the time.
So had Special Forces stolen General Stubblebine's idea, or was it a coincidence? Had they been staring at goats anyway, and they just didn't want him interfering? And was the goat staring back post 9/11? I decided to try and find the answer to these questions. I called Fort Bragg and asked if I could see Goat Lab, but they said they didn't know what I was talking about. But they let me film shots of the base, and off camera, a military public affairs man whispered to me that Goat Lab was just across the road from this building. Someone else told me that Goat Lab used to be called Dog Lab, but nobody wanted to do all that to dogs, so they switched to goats, and that's all anyone would tell me. I felt I was getting close to a great army secret. Glenn says that the master sergeant who could stop the heart of a goat was called Michael Ichanis. How did he get sick as a result of stopping the goat's heart?
To generate enough power, to generate enough force of intent to damage the goat, he damaged himself.
What part of him?
His heart.
His heart was damaged. Yeah. Can you do that?
Not really.
Can you not do it because you don't want to, but do you have the power to stop a goat's heart?
No, I don't think I have the power to stop a goat's heart. I kind of think that if one trained themselves to get to that level, then one would have to say, what did the goat ever do to me? Why that goat?
I had many questions. Were they staring at goats again post 9/11? Could I find Michael Ichanis? And how did this all begin? Who was the inspiration behind the wall walking and the goat staring? And so I asked around, and the same name kept coming up. It's a name few people outside the military have ever heard, but it turns out that this one man started the whole thing. His name is Lieutenant Colonel Jim Channon.
Welcome to my home. And if you want to pass through these gates, you have to be part mystic and prepared for everything that will surprise you, and part visionary to imagine the very best that could happen to you, and therefore create your best shopping list.
Why are you unlike my mental picture of a lieutenant colonel in the US military?
Because you haven't seen many. Yeah, the only reason that you have a funny picture of us is because you've been watching too many movies made by people who don't know anything about it.
Jim Channon's story begins during the Vietnam War.
That's 30 days under combat conditions, and I had more like 15 months. But this is real stuff. It's the only one that, you know, in the end really counts if you want to have any credibility. Being in Vietnam 8 years without a satisfactory conclusion left us as an army thinking that, you know, we've got to change some things here. I mean, in Vietnam, I felt like tire rubber, frankly. The politicians, like, waved me off. I had the right to leathers to the mothers and fathers of the soldiers who were killed in my unit. When I came home, I couldn't even watch my daughter be born in a hospital. Hello.
Jim says that in Vietnam, the US Army was guileless and kind-hearted, and many of his men were killed because they impulsively fired high, missing their targets, and they just weren't the killing machines that the Army wanted them to be.
I find that the kind of human being that is attracted to military service has a great deal of difficulty being cunning. We suffered in Vietnam so much from not being cunning. We just presented ourselves, you know, in our righteousness and got our butts shot off.
When Jim returned from Vietnam, he asked the Pentagon if he could go on a fact-finding mission. He wanted the Army to learn how to be more cunning. The Pentagon, bruised like Jim from Vietnam, agreed. Jim decided that the best place to learn cunning was from the emerging New Age movement of California. Jim's first stop was here at Esalen in Big Sur.
Can you have some fun with this back? See if you can kind of have a conversation with this back. Tell it how you feel about it right now, how you're feeling right now, what's going on. Really let it come from you. See if you can express yourself in your back.
And everywhere I went, I told them what I was up to, that I'm part of a military think tank, and I'm here to learn whatever I can. And they helped me immensely.
Were they surprised?
Yeah, they were surprised and happy.
After visiting 150 Californians, Jim returned from his journey in 1979, and he wrote a confidential paper designed for the military's eyes only. In Jim's 1st Earth Battalion, soldiers would carry baby lambs into hostile countries. They'd greet the enemy with sparkly eyes and an automatic hug. The new battlefield uniform would include a loudspeaker that would automatically emit indigenous music and words of peace. If this wasn't enough to pacify the enemy, the loudspeakers would be switched to broadcast discordant sounds like acid rock music out of sync to bombard and confuse the enemy. Soldiers would learn to fast on juice for a week and eat only nuts and grains for a month. They would fall in love with everyone, sense plant auras, obtain the power to pass through objects, stop their own hearts with no ill effects, have out-of-body experiences, have the ability to massage and cleanse the colon, stop using mindless cliches, stay out alone at night, and be able to hear and see other people's thoughts until they became super warriors, warrior monks. Do you actually believe that it is possible for somebody to reach such a high level of warrior monkdom that they could do things that ordinary people just could never do, like, for instance, become invisible or walk through walls or stuff like that?
Well, people under extreme pressure have been known, pregnant women have been known to lift up automobiles when their child was under it. We could expect the same from a warrior.
Now Jim had to sell his ideas to the Army's top brass. He convened a make-or-break meeting at Fort Knox.
And as I was flying toward the think tank meeting at Fort Knox, I went, you know, I can't just give these people a briefing about this. This isn't just information. So rather than tell these guys, I'm going to give you a briefing about it, I said, I'm going to initiate you into the 1st Earth Battalion. I said, to begin the ceremony this evening, gentlemen, we're going to do a mantram. Take a deep breath, and as you let it out, sound yee. At this point, they laughed. A few people chuckled, a little bit embarrassed. And then I was able to say, excuse me, you've been given a set of instructions and I expect you to carry them out at high level. See, tapping right into the military mindset. Second time we did it, I mean, the place became unified.
Jim took me to his garden. He said he'd perform for me the very same speech he performed for the commanders of the US military at Fort Knox back in 1979.
Gentlemen, it's a great honor to have you here in this place of sanctuary where we can mend our wounds and dream our dreams about better service. It's time that all the armies of the planet join together, so join me in this vision of being all we can be, because this is the place where the 1st Earth Battalion began, and this is the place where you, still, with the full permission of the United States Army, have the right to think the unthinkable, to dream the possible, and with your service, intention, and selfless nature, bring it about for others.
The commanders were no longer laughing, Jim said. Like him, they'd been crushed by their experiences in Vietnam. It was as if the entire US Army was suffering from post-combat depression.
So I was immediately appointed the commander of the 1st Earth Battalion.
And is the 1st Earth Battalion still alive?
It is.
Jim published his 1st Earth Battalion manual, and immediately throughout the army, soldiers began to try and implement his ideas.
It was like pulling the pin on a grenade and dropping it in the Pentagon.
Really? It was that big?
It was very powerful. I think it touched everybody that read it.
Fresh strawberries.
It rang true. It especially rang true with combat veterans, you know. It affected a lot of the command structure. And so a lot of people started thinking, how could we apply this? You know, in the special ops areas of the intelligence units, you know, how could we apply this? People started thinking out of the box. Bert Stubblebine was certainly influenced by it. He started thinking a lot out of the box.
But there was a misunderstanding. Jim realised rationally that sensing plant auras and melting the hearts of the enemy with baby lambs were good ideas on paper, but weren't necessarily achievable skills in real life.
In this case, we're really not trying to perform miracles. We're trying to take ordinary people that are in unfortunate and extremely dangerous situations and simply bring them to a level of competence. So we're aiming at a higher objective in order to get to a reasonable state of, you know, potential for the soldier.
But Jim's superiors were literal-minded men, hence General Stubblebine's many determined efforts to walk through his wall.
You're reaching deep inside you, go for things you've never known. It's been tough.
All over the US Army in the 1980s, Jim's ideas were flourishing. In fact, their famous Be All You Can Be recruitment ads were inspired by Jim's manual.
All that you can
Hey, First Sergeant. Good morning.
You can do it in the Army.
In the early 1980s, the Army offered Jim the opportunity to command a real 1st Earth Battalion, but he turned them down. He wanted his ideas to float out there. The 1st Earth Battalion would exist wherever someone became inspired to implement his ideas, however they chose, which is how they started staring at goats at Fort Bragg. It turned out that Goat Lab wasn't set up just so 1st Earth Battalion fans could stare at the animals. It was part of the more conventional special ops medical training. They'd break the goat's legs using actual force and then nurse them back to health. But once the goats were on base, the Jedi warriors took the initiative to stare at them. Did this explain how Michael Ichanis had managed to kill one in this fashion? Was the goat already in a shaky medical condition? I decided to track down Michael Ichanis. It may be surprising to learn that the man initiating this frenzied mock knife attack is a great fan of Jim Channon's peace-loving 1st Earth Battalion manual. His name is Pete Brusso, and he's a former colleague of Michael Ichanis. He teaches martial arts to Marines here at Camp Pendleton in San Diego. The bad news is that Michael Ichanis is dead. Pete said he'd tell me the strange story of how he'd come to die, but first he wanted to show me an invention of his. This invention is based on Jim Channon's study of chakra points and Eastern mind-body philosophy. It's being carried today by the 82nd Airborne in Iraq. It's called the Predator.
It's friendly to the earth and all the other things we talk about, but it has a spirit to it. Things we haven't taught you is it's a push knife. You can strike and push a person away. The pointed verses go into people. Yeah. You take this point and push down like that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And it's just that quick.
It began to dawn on me that Pete had a broad definition of Jim Channon's ideals.
Just simply place this here, and they're down. You know, and it's just punish the bejesus out of them, you know? Get away from me.
I want to grab him and shuck him forward.
If you were to grab, you use the kinetic energy aspect of that to remove him away.
Is this really unpleasant for you? Oh, yes. Ow.
What do you think?
Yeah.
It hurts like hell. And now this is amazing. This is truly amazing. I'm only going to use 2 fingers and watch where you go. Isn't that something?
Okay, yeah.
And you want to punch at me because you don't like it, right? And you just let you run into this thing.
I don't want to punch at you. What I want to do is just leave.
So that you can easily hook a finger, for example.
Why are you doing this on me?
Pete's Predator was specifically designed to inflict carnage on chakra points, but even so, it didn't seem very 1st Earth Battalion to me.
Okay, well,
stop,
then let go.
Stop.
Let go.
Stop. Will you stop, please?
I was soon to have a major breakthrough regarding my investigation into Goat Lab, but first Pete was going to hurt me even more. Camp Pendleton, San Diego, and Pete Brusso was continuing to hurt me with this 1st Earth Battalion-inspired Predator. Pete was truly a maestro of violence.
All I need to do is rub his head with it. You can do this, take an eyeball out. If I want a little pain compliance, I'll be as easy as I can. A little pain compliance.
Later, Pete told me that you can grab an Iraqi insurgent with the Predator, rip out his eyeballs, stab him in the neck. The blood would squirt out like a fountain all over his friends, and this would create a powerful visual psychic disincentive for the other insurgents to attack. It seemed to me that once the American army had recovered their strength after Vietnam, they saw that Jim Channon's ideas could be used to destroy people rather than heal them. Back inside, Pete told me how Michael Ichanis had come to die.
The common story that he was killed in a helicopter crash in Nicaragua. That's not the story that I have heard.
What have you heard?
Michael Ichanis was very much into key energy and projection and trying to bring that more esoteric aspect as opposed to gross motor skill. We're going to apply spirit behind things, mind, body, spirit type stuff. And to prove his mind, body, spirit, he used to let Jeeps run over him. And if you slowly go over the body can pretty much take that. If you hit it with any kind of speed, you've got kinetic energy shock to it. Well, the person driving a Jeep didn't realize he was supposed to slow down too much. Oops, yes, and he took internal injuries and died. That's what I heard.
Do you think that they then made up the helicopter story to kind of spare everybody's blushes?
Could be.
Either way, now that Ichanis was dead, I was at a dead end regarding my investigation into Goat Lab. But then we had a breakthrough. My producer John Sargent went to Las Vegas to interview a 1st Earth Battalion fan called Colonel John Alexander, who is one of Al Gore's oldest friends. And the following conversation ensued.
I wonder, have you heard of Michael Achanis, John? Have you heard of Michael Achanis? We were told that in the 70s, he was the chief trainer of Special Forces, a martial arts guy.
Almost undoubtedly not true.
We were told that in one corner of Special Forces, there was a complete expert in martial arts who was a training fellow who could stare at a goat and stop its heart.
Yeah, you're talking about Guy Savelli.
Actually, I was thinking of Michael Achanis.
I think it's Guy Savelli.
After much searching, we found Guy Savelli in Ohio. He confirmed the story and said in fact he's still practicing the technique. Only last week he stopped the heart of his hamster just by staring at it. And you do this to your hamster? Or to hamsters? You do this to hamsters?
They died. I have to get it. I have the tape. I have the tape there. It goes around, and I can stop from going around. It's driving me nuts. Then you can say, okay, I want to stop from going around. Well, then I'm going to make it kind of sicker, not feel the need, burrow under the sawdust like that. Yeah.
And it just drops dead?
Well, we'll take a look and see. It's dead. And I had a guy take care of it every night.
What do you mean take care of it?
Feed it, water it.
So you knew that it was a healthy hamster?
Yes.
And then you started staring, you started concentrating.
3 days, yeah. 3 times.
Guy's involvement in the US military began with a telephone call out of the blue from Fort Bragg. This was shortly after Jim Channon had published his 1st Earth Battalion manual. Special Forces told Guy that they wanted him to teach the soldiers his particularly paranormal brand of martial arts.
This is the tape from Fort Bragg. It's a demo tape with the guys, the Special Forces in uniform. He goes too slowly, he gets clobbered in the hand. I learned with a machete. I'm going to tell you something. They did this, one right after the other. It wasn't like, okay, let's take a 10-minute break now. We did it one. That alone is paranormal. Break them with their head, break it with their hands, break it with their feet. Bang, 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 bang. Hit me here. Okay, let's get done. Let's get done as fast as we can. This is who does that?
The man in the red trousers in this video is Guy Savelli.
You seen the shield, took mental concentration. And you see the 3 of us standing here. We're all in good shape and not hurt.
Special Forces was so impressed with Guy's techniques, they wanted him to go further, to teach them what's known as remote influencing.
Oh, that's what that
And I taught them how to make a person forget what they're going to say.
Really?
I can teach them. Oh, yeah, you can do that. You can make a person forget what they're going to say easily. And I said, this is what you do. And all you really say is in your head, basically, you say, no. You aren't, you know, did you ever play pool, billiards, or anything? Did you ever get a person when you missed a shot and they were going to, you wanted them to, you missed your shot and you're going like, argh, and they're going to shoot now, and you're like, no, nah, and they missed their shot. That's the same thing. It's the same thing.
Is it like a tone of voice thing?
Yes, but you're doing it in your head.
So
it's in your head.
What do you have to do?
You just go like, no, don't do it. Don't make that shot. I'm going to lose. You know, you get that feeling inside of you that you blew it, and you want them to do the same thing.
Guy can't remember exactly how the conversation got around to goat staring, but he does recall at some point that night saying, let's give it a go.
I said, can you get a goat, get an EEG machine, hitch the goat up, you guys stay with it, and I will try to knock the goat down and drop its heart rate. So we got the goat the next day, set it up, and we started. And you picture a golden road going up in the sky, and because I'm Christian, I picture the Lord is up there. And I picture myself walking up into the arms of the Lord, and I picture him put his arms around me when he does it, and I get a chill inside of me, and I know it's right. So I did that. And I'm kind of asking for a way to knock this goat down. So it comes to me that probably there is this one picture that we have of like St. Michael the Archangel. He's got this sword there like that. So I got that picture in my mind, and I kind of sent it over with my mind to where the goat was. In my mind, I pictured that St. Michael got this sword and was going through the goats and knocking it down to the ground. And I got that. And so inside of me, you can't even breathe. You're going like, and you believe it. And after about 15 minutes, I said, Lenny, you better go see. I don't know for sure.
Because the goat was in a different room.
I couldn't, it was 100 feet away, yeah. I couldn't see it at all, no. I never saw it till afterward, never saw it. He said, oh, it's down. I said, oh, cool, we did it. That was it. So they wanted to do it. So they wanted to do that test again. You know, and they wanted me to kill the goat. They wanted to take the extreme, you know, kill the goat. Yes.
Let me just interrupt. Why did they, I mean, wasn't that kind of good enough? You know, I mean, that's pretty amazing. So why did they want to go one step further and kill the goat?
This was, I met with a bunch of military people, and I guess they thought you could, whatever.
Okay.
So we did another test then, and we picked like 30 goats. I says, and what you want to do is you want to put a number on the goats. He says, you pick the goat and you pick the number, and I'll drop the goat. And they picked the number, and I concentrated, but it was just so, I was so PO'd at them. And the goat next to the goat with the number dropped. And they're like...
Collateral damage. Guy said he had all the videos at home. A video of the goat dropping and a video of his hamster dying. He went off to find them. An hour later, he returned.
I didn't find the tape of the goat lab in Fort Bragg. And the hamster one, I didn't even think to, I thought, oh, these guys are going to be there forever. I have that tape too. I'll find them both for you when you come back. I have them.
But Guy did bring one tape. This is much more recent. Special Forces are staring at goats again post 9/11. They secretly sent 3 soldiers up to Ohio to stare at a local goat at a veterinary surgery near Guy's house.
That isn't the best part yet.
So these are Special Forces guys here.
Yeah. Listen, watch. I don't know when it starts out. I was surprised. See, they have to take a baseline here.
So the concentration is going on now in another room.
Yeah, no, he's right there.
Oh.
The guy's right there doing it. But
him or him? Who's doing?
No, it's away from them. It's not
Okay.
neither of those two. It's probably the guy. I would assume it's this guy right. No, there's another guy right there. It might be him.
But we're going to see some kind of physical response on the goat's part.
Just as freezes there. The heart rate was around the mid-60s and dropped to 55.
The goat video seemed a little disappointing after all the build-up, but then Guy explained that the goat was only being subjected to level 1. Then if you carry that further, the goat will topple over, will fall. And then if you go even further than that, the goat could actually die.
Yes.
Okay, so we were seeing level 1 there.
Yes.
And you...
But level 1 is high. Hey, level 1 is high.
Guy said that if I came back in a few weeks, he'd show me the video in which his hamster falls victim to level 3, death.
It will not
Back at Camp Pendleton, Pete Brusso knew all about the goat staring and he was sniffy about it. He said it might be fabled, but it is basically a party trick. He said he could do it to me. Then he asked me to choke him.
Now, choke. 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 Okay.
Okay, because that...
I didn't want to choke Pete. When I raised my hands, I saw that they were violently trembling. I had assumed until that moment that we were essentially kidding around, but the sight of my hands made me realize that we weren't.
It'll take your brain 0.3 of a second to realize what is occurring. And then after that 0.3, you're mine. I'm going to touch you, and that is it. I'm not going to even move my feet, okay? But I'm going to project myself into you, and you're going to go off my body as far as you can possibly want to. You don't want to be close to me.
Might I hit?
Yes, you might. But that'll be half the fun to watch you fall over that.
I really am afraid.
You're apprehensive, but like I said, I'll do it very easily. You can sue me.
No, I 100% believe
it's
in your
easy.
powers.
It's not
you
just
realize
me.
that. There's no shadow of doubt.
You have
in
it
my
too.
mind.
You have it too.
Will you bear all those things in mind?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I promise you. Absolutely, without question.
So I'm not a Marine, I'm not young anymore, and I do not utilize
I can appreciate
my powers.
that. And if
I do sometimes experience fear when something bad is about to happen to me, but I found that I was at this point abnormally debilitated with fear.
Okay, just relax. Just relax. Just relax. We'll fly across the room. Yes. It's very easy.
Okay,
Okay.
choking you.
Choke. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Well, relax a second if you want to, we got to do this. Okay. When we touch here and move, I'm literally going to move through your body, and it's going to feel like we're going to pierce right through you, and you won't be able to stand there. Okay? Just like that. And I never moved.
I really did feel something that was freaky and nauseating. It was abject fear. Pete said this was because he was projecting his thoughts into my head.
So when I was clearly a little afraid of you before you started doing that stuff, was that my own?
No, that was me.
That was you.
That was a lot of me taking hold of a very little gift you gave me.
Vulnerable, the fact that as much as I
you
tried
were
to
more
disguise
concerned about it. You
my...
were concerned about it. So we'll just make sure he's really concerned about it.
Okay.
We'll make sure that it really is bad. Okay. The matter of thought projection. I gave you the thought and you ran away with it. You were good at it.
Pete said I was the Iraqi insurgent being sprayed with the fountain of blood emanating from the neck of his friend. I was the hamster. I was the goat.
You weren't in my head. I was in your head.
The news is that Jim Channon has been brought back from retirement by the Army's Chief of Staff, General Shoemaker. Donald Rumsfeld had asked for creative input into the war on terror, but Jim won't tell me what his input is. This is all he'll say.
I am still the commander of the 1st Earth Battalion, and I am still sought for my opinion.
And how many soldiers do you have in the battalion?
How many minds have read the manual? I would say 20,000. But the mindset of openness is stunning. I mean, for the Chief of Staff of the Army to give me a mission to be with the top 30 majors in the Army.
And these are really top people.
The top people.
Like who?
Like the Chief of Staff of the Army.
Back in Ohio, Guy Savelli has found his hamster video.
See, now there's going around there, and you got to get started here.
So these are the hamsters behaving normally?
I'd never done it before, so I'm trying to work with two hamsters, like two minds there. So I want to keep the one from going in, and I'm trying to make the other one sick. The object is to keep them out of the wheel. I would try to work on both of them separately, which I think is very hard to do. Make one feel sick and keep one out of the thing. And you try to split your mind to do that. You concentrate like you do. It's kind of like, now this thing here is looking at me. It was kind of bizarre because he would just stare at me. This little hamster is looking at me. He's looking at the source, I guess. I don't know. Like a bit more, you know what I mean? More like.
So you look at this.
And there he's down. There he is underneath right there. There he is right there, accomplishing the task I wanted to do. Look what he's doing to that one. He's running on top of it. You know that's bizarre. He's right on top of the other. He's right on top of the other hamster right there.
He's
right on top of him. So I thought, God, is he dead or is he just sick or? That's kind of nuts, isn't it? To see it like that. Look at him. That's kind of. He's right on top of the other one. The other one's not even moving. He's not moving. So I'm accomplishing my task there.
It did seem odd to me, although I have never owned a hamster, and so I don't know whether or not this is aberrant behaviour. Emotions such as circumspection and wariness are not easy to discern in hamsters, although perhaps hamster-owning viewers of this programme will have a view on this.
It gets more bizarre at the end. Get out of there, see? But still, it isn't enough. He's trying to get out of there. In my mind...
And this isn't something that he normally does.
No! One hamster goes on top of the wheel and stays there. The other one wants to go around. You can see, he knows he wants to get out of there. Get out of there. Somehow get out of that. Get out of this ray that's going at him.
This is level 2, right?
Yeah.
It's quite eerie.
Yes, it is.
And then the hamster got up, brushed itself down, and the tape ended. Later, Guy explained that he didn't want me to see the part where the hamster dies because he was afraid I was a bleeding heart liberal and would take it out of context. But, he said, the hamster did die. In the summer of 2004, Guy called me. He said Special Forces had requested he travel covertly to Fort Bragg with an animal. Guy wouldn't tell me what kind of animal, but he said it was small and cheap to purchase, so I assume it was a hamster. Guy says the animal staring program is back. When I asked him what motivated this is what he said. The soldiers responsible for these acts of torture trained at Fort Bragg. Guy says the Fort Bragg commanders are horrified by what they did, and so they've co-opted Guy to teach the soldiers a new way of interrogating people. They want to learn how to get a detainee to talk just by staring at them. The psychic power of the stare, Guy says, is the kind and gentle way forward. I am inclined to believe that Guy is telling the truth about his reactivation. General Stubblebine is pleased to hear that some of the techniques he pioneered are back in George Bush's America.
If you take a pendulum from a clock and you move the pendulum way out here and then you let it go, what does the pendulum do? It comes way back over here, okay? My guess is that I had taken things out too far, and when you let the pendulum go, it swung back, way back over here, and now pieces of them are being resurrected on somewhere out here. Can you afford to get stale in the intelligence world? The answer is no. You cannot afford to miss something. If you don't believe that, take a look at 9/11 and airplanes that were taking off but not learning how to land. Okay? And where did that information get lost? You cannot afford to miss something when you're talking about the intelligence world.
That's the story. It's the story of the creativity of an institution you would expect to be the last one to open its mind to the greater realities.
But soon I would discover that some of Jim's ideas are being applied in Iraq and Guantanamo Bay in the most horrible ways.